In emergency management, the definition of a stakeholder is any person or entity with a vested interest in the survival or recovery of a given community.
This is the Stakeholder Prepping podcast, where the tactical comes from the practical, and today, you become your own stakeholder.
Here are your hosts, Chris and AC.
Welcome back to Stakeholder Prepping, where you are the stakeholder in your own survival. And AC, this is episode 96. So that's what, 8 weeks away from episode 104?
Yeah, but by the time people hear this, 104 will be 8 weeks away, which obviously is a big deal to us. That is our 2-year podcast anniversary. Very, very special to us.
Yeah. So just to let you know, we do still have our t-shirt design quote contest going on, and there's a lot of design and logistics that need to go into this. So we want to make sure we get our winners taken care of early. So thank you to everyone who has participated so far. But I think we're going to have to cut this off. So this is the last week to get your quotes in if you want to participate in that contest.
Yes, this would be the last week that we would be accepting new contest entries. And on our little entry form there, it's not just a t-shirt design. If you don't have an idea, if you don't have any quotes, if we've never said anything quote worthy, there's still a cool spot where you can ask us any questions, and any of those that we like, we will answer on 104, and we will also send you free stuff. So there's plenty of cool ways to get free stuff, even if you don't just want to design a t-shirt. But you have to fill out our little Google Links sheet thing there, and that'll be in the blog for this episode. And it is pinned on top of our Facebook page, how to get there.
Yeah, and you can always submit those. The questions, there is no time limit. But for the quote contest, we are going to be picking those next week. So we will be contacting the winners next week. So that one, if you want to design a t-shirt and live on in infamy in these semi-sacred halls of stakeholder prepping merch, this is your last week to do it. So hop to.
Yeah, get after it. And speaking of t-shirts, we always have a limited edition t-shirt out there. The current one is kind of a TACNAV design. It was kind of in honor of the TACNAV card. So there is a new design that was one of Chris's that is up right this second. It just dropped right now, and it's pretty cool. It's like a P38 can opener in night vision. It's just kind of a cool t-shirt. I like the design. So that is up there now. We've killed the last one, and the new t-shirt is up. And yeah, that is a limited edition, and it will live there until we decide we don't want to sell that one anymore. And then you will have a legit, like, vintage stakeholder prepping t-shirt that no one else will ever have.
Woot woot. Stakeholderprepping.store is where to check those out. So, but let's jump into today, because we are kicking off actually a 4-part series that's been in the works for a while. This is kind of the first time we've done a real series. But over the next several weeks, we're going to be talking about something that sits underneath almost every preparedness topic we've ever covered. It sits right underneath that bug out bag, underneath your food storage, your emergency fund, your medical kit, your communications plan, and honestly, most of life in general, right? We're talking about people. Specifically, we're going to be talking about how people react when things go wrong.
Yeah, and this actually, it's not 4-part, it's 5-part, because we're going to round this out with a really cool guest for episode 100, right? So
yeah, we did get
that is
Dr. Stephen Taylor to
kind
to
of
join in this.
along these lines of the sort of the mental side of prepping. So yeah, this is the first series we've ever done, and I think it's going to be pretty fun and exciting to talk about. I know a lot of people just shy away from the mental aspect because it's not fun, it's not exciting, it's not gear. But it's very important, especially when we start talking about crisis and how you would act during a crisis. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, I know exactly how I'd react during a crisis, I would encourage a little humility because most of us have been absolutely convinced we would handle something one way, only to discover that reality had other plans for us. We truly fall back on our training. And if we haven't been practicing our preps, we sink to the level of our own incompetence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it because one of the things that I have learned over these years, over the past 2 years, is there are 2 versions of every emergency, right? There's the emergency itself, and then there's the human response to the emergency. And a lot of that has just come from the research that we have done for these episodes and just seeing what the facts of the emergency were and then how it was handled by government responding agencies and how it was handled by people on the ground and everything like that. There are really 2 sides to it. And honestly, sometimes the second one causes more problems than the first. And that's where really we talked about it a couple episodes ago with our apps like ReadyFam and Nomad Core. Those can help out tremendously, especially when you throw in the physical planner that Mad Gear has. That's a huge stress relief because you have it right there at your fingertips and your contingency plan is right there laid out in front of you.
Yeah, and I think about this. I really do like the Mad Gear stuff. I mean, I'm old school. I'm kind of tactile. I like to write things down. But we've talked about this in a number of our episodes. How writing things down is actually like a really good way to clear all of those stressors out of your brain. And I'll give you a quick story. Recently, I had to go do my biennial flight review, which is anybody who's a pilot, regardless of how much you fly or if you do it for a living or not or whatever, every 2 years, you are required to go up with a flight instructor and prove that you still know how to operate an airplane. And there's a lot of ground time. You have to sit on the ground and talk about how to fly an airplane and all the regulations and all that kind of stuff, right? But I had to go do that recently with an instructor. And one of the things that's just crazy, I mean, it's in every single biennial flight review. Anybody who's ever taken any flight lessons knows one of the things they always do is at some point they just pull the power back on you, say, okay, you have lost your engine. What do you do? And that is probably the biggest thing that they drill into you the most is how to land the airplane when the big fan that keeps the pilot cool stops working, right? And that's one of the biggest things, and you always so in your head, while you were flying an airplane, every pilot does this, they all you're doing is looking for somewhere to land that airplane. I mean, that's how often they do that to you in primary flight school, is how everything you're doing, no matter what's going on in the airplane, and you're flying out in front of the airplane, and you're thinking about all this other stuff going on, you're talking to air traffic control, you are also always looking for a place to land the airplane, because at any point, that instructor next to you can just pull that power back and say, okay, you lost your engine. Or in real life, the real life emergency is the engine stops working. What do you do? And it's just crazy to think about that if you are prepared for that, you kind of go into robot mode. And I know, Chris, you've had a lot of, formal training, combat training, and there are certain things in your life that if those happen, you go into that version of Chris that is not normal Chris. That's like, I'm in robot mode now. This is the thing I do. And yeah, in flight training, that's like the one thing that, like, if the engine goes out, you have a checklist, which to me is kind of like that Mad Gear, quick draw card. Like, you pull out the engine out checklist and you go, okay, here we go. We're going to start with the fuel, and then we're going to go to the mixture and the carb heat, and you do all these things, and you kind of work up the list. But it's kind of funny that that's where you get with regards to that human response. If you've ever watched somebody totally lose their mind because the internet went out for 10 minutes, you've already witnessed that on a small scale version of kind of what we're talking about. But when you have formal training, when you practice your preps, then you know how you're going to react. You know that you're going to fall back on your lowest level of training. And that's something I just recently experienced. And it's kind of funny to have it come back because in the last 2 years, I haven't decided to turn the engine off on the airplane for funsies, right? But as soon as he does that, as soon as the instructor did that, I'm like, I remember because I have done that so many times over the last, 20 years of flying airplanes.
Yeah. Push on stick, make plane go woo
Yeah.
hoo.
Yeah, right.
And
Exactly.
and that goes all the way back to episode 75 with Brad Colbert, falling back into your training. What you were just saying about robot mode, it's slow down, take a beat, figure out your parameters, and then focus on what needs to happen within those set parameters. So it all funnels together. And that's why today's topic out of this 5-part series is the psychology of panic. Not because we want to scare anybody, not because we think panic makes people weak. Actually, it's quite the opposite. But the goal today is to try to understand why panic exists in the first place and what it does to us, like biologically. And most importantly, why panic is something that can be managed and improved through preparation and training. That's the idea behind today's episode.
Right. Because if panic was purely random, we would all be in trouble. Fortunately, it is not. Human beings are surprisingly predictable. Like we all kind of sleep and we all kind of eat, we all kind of poop, and we all kind of do it all at the same time every day.
And for some reason, we all tend to walk in counterclockwise circles. I saw a study on that recently.
I
Mosh
think
pits
I think
will go
that's
counterclockwise.
I've read some physiology stuff, and I think the reason that is because most of us are right-handed and thereby right-footed.
Even entirely left-handed groups will do it, though.
Are there such thing as entirely left-handed groups? Like, do they have clubs that I don't know about?
It's weird. The studies show it's not
Weird.
just right-handed people.
Is
So
that only in the Northern Hemisphere? I would like to know. Like, do our Australian listeners walk in random counterclockwise?
that's a good question.
Do they go the other way?
That's a really good question. So,
Maybe.
but let's get this predictability thing out of the way immediately, right? This is not one of those episodes where we're sitting here pretending we have never been stressed, never made bad decisions, never gotten overwhelmed, never missed something obvious. I have done it. I don't know how many times this week alone. Um, but we have all done it, right? The difference is trying to learn from it and actually taking action towards progress.
Right, and preferably, you're learning from it before it becomes a life-changing event.
Exactly. So let's start with the obvious question. What actually is panic? Most people think panic is fear, but it isn't. Fear is an emotion. Panic is what happens when fear overwhelms our ability to think clearly, right? That's a very important distinction between the two.
Right, because fear by itself isn't necessarily bad. Fear is useful. Fear is the reason most of us, like, don't try to pet bears, right?
I bet that dog.
"Can I pet that big furry giant dog?"
But you're right. Fear is information. Fear tells us that something may be wrong. Panic is what happens when that information starts controlling us instead of informing us. And that's where things become dangerous. The interesting thing is that panic is not a design flaw, it's actually an evolutionary feature. Human beings evolved in environments where rapid reactions oftentimes meant survival. I mean, you hear a noise in the bushes, you don't stop and conduct a committee meeting, you move.
Right, which makes sense if the thing in the bushes is in fact trying to eat you.
Right. But the problem is that our brains don't always distinguish between a charging predator and a modern crisis. And this is where we are still trying to evolve biologically to understand this difference. To your nervous system, uncertainty is uncertainty. It doesn't matter where it's coming from, whether it's what is that noise that my engine is making or what is that thing in the bushes behind me at night in Appalachia. And by the way, If you heard it, no, you didn't.
Is it a bear playing a banjo?
Right?
Because then I don't know whether
So,
I'd be scared or like just super intrigued.
I if in any case, if it's in Appalachia, if you heard it, no, you didn't, because there's no way to tell. But that's why people can experience these very similar stress responses during a house fire or a financial emergency or a medical diagnosis, severe weather, even a major workplace crisis. Different events, but similar biological reactions. You've seen in the movies where somebody is, being told a cancer diagnosis and everything around them totally tunes out. They just sit in their own mind and don't even hear the rest of the diagnosis or treatment options or anything like that, right? It's a complete shutdown. And you see the exact same scenario play out with your house is up for foreclosure in the movies. It's
Yeah, it is interesting how they depict that. You're right. It's like you get the very first little bit and it's clear, and then it's just kind of like that the Charlie Brown teacher after that, right?
right. And it's a lot of those, we depict things in the movies the way that the director or the way that we see them in real life or describe them to be happening in real life. So we can try to portray that emotional state or value to the audience.
Right, and that kind of that explains a lot about modern life because most of us aren't being chased by wolves, but our brain still acts kind of like we're being chased by wolves.
I would be that idiot getting chased by wolves, but my pockets would be full of raw ribeye. Like, here, pup, 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 come on. So that's that's me. That's on my risk matrix. But this is actually closer to the truth than many people realize, right? For example, the Department of Health and Human Services has published extensive information on the body's stress response. When we perceive a threat, our bodies begin releasing stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. And we have talked about this before. Heart rate increases, breathing changes, attention narrows, you get tunnel vision, start to kind of black out all of your surroundings except for exactly what you're focused on. Blood flow shifts towards systems associated with immediate survival. That's where you start to feel your fingertips get cold, your toes get cold, and then it stretches back into your wrists, your elbows, all the way up to your armpits. Your blood is retracting from your extremities into your core to keep everything warm. And if something gets amputated, it's not an immediate kill because your body is trying to pull all of the blood back into your core system, right? All of that happens automatically. You don't choose it. Your body does it for you. And there's nothing you can really do to stop that.
And time dilation too happens a lot, right? It's not just the hyper focusing and the tunnel vision, but also like people don't realize how quickly an event happened often because of what their brain does to them.
Right. Bank robbery survivors, especially if
Yeah.
there's a shootout, they'll say it lasted, 3 or 4 minutes, when in reality, it was maybe 15 to 20 seconds.
I was reading an interview about a cop who got in a shootout. And this was probably, I want to say this probably happened 15, 20 years ago, but he was talking about being in a shootout. And you'll appreciate this, but like in that instance, he had to kind of stop and wonder why these trash can lids that said federal on the end were flying past his face.
Were they the round casings?
He was seeing the casings, but his brain had slowed it down so much he could actually remember reading the back of the casings as they were flying in front of his face. And in that moment, he was like, it was the weirdest thing. It was like somebody was throwing these, 2-foot trash can lids by me, and I could read the word federal as they flew by.
It's
Isn't that
insane.
crazy? Like, it's nuts.
It-
I'll find the article and I'll post it on our blog. It was really interesting. But yeah, he actually was during the shootout kind of wondering why these giant trash can lids that said the word federal on the back were flying past his face. And I just thought that was one of those quintessential kind of your brain does this thing where it just almost puts a stop on reality and everything gets very tunnely. And the way your natural foveal or field of vision perceives the world changed so much that in that moment, that's what he thought was going on.
You know the phrase "time flies when you're having fun"?
Right. Yeah.
Put put some bullets going both ways into the mix and see how time changes. I
Right. Yeah.
promise it's a
Exactly.
totally
Yeah.
different experience.
Time goes quite a bit slower when you're getting shot at. Um, but yeah, so this all obviously sounds helpful until your brain decides that, forgetting where you left your phone charger is apparently a national emergency or something. And by the way, I want to talk about phone chargers because we do that a lot. And I think it's because we both kind of, you know, ran out the house with a dead battery before. But that's one thing, man. If there's one piece of gear I could say go buy that now, it's a stupid Amazon phone charger. There's a couple I like. I carry them all the time. And in fact, I'm a like a Pixel guy, right? Like I don't even have a real phone. I'm like a Google guy, but I bought this cool case that has like a battery built into it, which is kind of cool. So like
Mhm.
it can charge the phone, like it can carry the phone itself now carries triple the battery charge. But I have a couple of Amazon, just I don't know the brand. I'll post some links, the ones I like that have like a solar charger on the phone charger, and they have the connectors built in. So it's got like the USB-C and it's got the old iPhone charger and it's got like a USB-A on it. And that way, it's always if you're wearing cargo pockets, it's in your pocket. If you're, like carrying a backpack, I have one in my backpack. Like I have not had a dead cell phone battery. I'm not kidding, in like years, because that's the one thing. We all protect our cell phones like we protect our children, but you don't think about the battery life itself. And man, if there's one thing you could do to like never be stressed out again, it's don't have a dead battery in your cell phone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like most of our life.
I get nervous when my battery drops below like 70%, and I'm like, yeah, I
Yeah,
should put
man.
it on the
Hey,
charger."
that's the prepper with the half tank of gas in your car. It's the exact same way when your cell phone battery hits 49%. You're like start stressing out about it, even though it's not something to stress out about, but you just do because you know now that you are closer to zero than 100.
Yeah, and this is all, you know, helpful, like you said, until your brain decides it's a national crisis, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
the system itself isn't bad. Showing that panic inside of your system isn't bad. The challenge is learning where to trust it and when to manage it, because the same biological mechanisms that help people survive genuine danger can also create this tunnel vision and poor decision making and cognitive decline and emotional overreactions. And that's where preparedness becomes incredibly valuable. So, preparedness isn't just about supplies, it's also about creating familiarity. And familiarity, especially with your own decision making process, reduces uncertainty.
Which is something I think a lot of people overlook. When we talk about preparedness, obviously, you immediately go to the food, water, gear, generators, radios, weapons, warmth, shelter, whatever. And those things matter, don't get me wrong. But preparedness also creates confidence.
Exactly. One of the reasons that preparedness reduces panic is because it gives your brain something to work with. It gives that framework. If the power goes out and you've never considered what you'll do, your brain is forced to solve multiple problems simultaneously. And people say they can multitask, they actually can't. The ones that can quote unquote multitask, there's a little switch in our brain and it can go A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. The ones that can multitask, that switch just functions faster and better, but they can't actually multitask. It's just switching between A and B faster. So they can concentrate on one thing at a time and switch back and forth easier. So when your brain is forced to solve multiple problems simultaneously, what's happening, right? How long will that last? What do I do? What if this power outage gets worse? What if I'm missing something? There's a lot of uncertainty all at once, and with a switch that can only go one of two directions, if you try to switch it into third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 13th gear, like you're driving a semi, you're going to overwhelm yourself and you've taken options off the table before you get to them.
Yeah, and if you've already thought about this, then if you already have the solution, your brain doesn't have to like start from zero. This is the pace model, right? That you just casually get up and you turn the generator on and you've practiced that a million times, or you fall back to your contingency, which is maybe a a solar generator that's in the closet and the battery's totally charged. So just having those preps already there and practiced, then your brain just naturally knows not to panic.
Bingo. And you don't need perfection. You just need a starting point. So just having some place to set your brain to a new 0 point, that's progress. Studies on emergency response repeatedly show that people perform better when they have pre existing mental models for dealing with a situation. Even imperfect plans oftentimes outperform no plans.
Yeah, and that should really be encouraging to all of our listeners because the goal isn't to become some kind of prepper superhero. The goal is to stop staring at the problem and just start solving it because you've already thought about the way to solve it. You already have that pace model and you're kind of waiting for that problem to happen. I mean, that's what I am, dude. When I see the lights flicker, I get excited. I don't panic.
That's a great way to put it. So, now one of the most interesting things about panic is that it doesn't always look the way that people expect. So, Hollywood has done a terrible job of teaching people what panic actually looks like. I know you'll agree with me on this, but
Yeah.
most movies portray panic as this screaming, running, chaos, dramatic music, "Run!" chicken with their head cut off, right? Sometimes that does happen, but oftentimes panic looks much, much quieter. A lot of the time, it looks like denial. Sometimes it looks like indecision. Sometimes it looks like doing absolutely nothing, like they are frozen in place, eyes wide, cannot catch their breath to speak a word.
Yeah, I think about this a lot. When they talk about drowning victims, that there's not like this screaming, splashing panic. That's not what happens. When people drown, they just go into the water and usually nobody saw it happen. It's not the way they portray that in the movie that somebody's like freaking out because what's happened is you're already exhausted by the time it's time to freak out.
Yes. And being a lifeguard for one of my first jobs, I've seen that happen. And it's terrifying to watch, a kid just slip off the dock and doesn't know what to do. And all of a sudden they're 3 feet under the water.
Right. And you're
There
right.
was
So
nothing there.
a lot of times it just looks like absolutely nothing, which is honestly so much more common than people realize.
It's very common. And researchers often refer to this as the freeze response. We've talked about, fight, flight, or freeze. Most people are familiar with that fight or flight, but freeze is equally as important because when the brain becomes overwhelmed, it sometimes pauses while trying to process competing information, especially if you've never been in that situation before. And if you've ever found yourself staring at a problem and thinking, I know I need to do something, I just don't know what, you have experienced a mild version of that. It's like we referred to a couple episodes going into your room, don't know where to start cleaning. So you just sit on the floor and play with your toys until mom or dad comes in and starts screaming at you about cleaning up your room.
Well, yeah, and I have definitely had those moments where something unexpected happens, and for a few seconds, my brain just kind of goes completely blank. You're like, I don't know exactly what to do," and then you kind of hopefully fall back on that training and go, "Oh yeah, this is a version of that thing I trained for." And usually that's kind of how it is for me. It's like that Rolodex. It's like, okay, I have practiced for trauma, and I just saw my buddy eat shit on his dirt bike. And I go, "Brrr, oh, it's the trauma thing. Go do that now."
Right. I have too. Most people have. And understanding that is important because it removes a lot of shame from the conversation. The goal isn't to never experience stress. The goal is to recognize that you are experiencing it faster because once you recognize it, you can start to manage it. And one of the most practical things listeners can take away from today's episode is that awareness creates options. So if you know that your stress narrows your focus, you can deliberately slow yourself down and expand your perspective. You can take that time and widen your gaze, find all of the exits, not just the one that you came in. If you know your uncertainty causes anxiety, you can build systems that reduce that uncertainty. If you know that information overload overwhelms you, you can create kind of these simple mental checklists ahead of time. So there's a lot that you can do with this.
And this is exactly why, like I said, pilots use checklists for everything. There's a checklist for everything. And doctors use checklists. Emergency responders use checklists. And yet, for some reason, regular people often think that they should be able to remember everything perfectly during a stress event. And that's why I like the Mad Gear quick draw cards. If you haven't checked out Mad Gear, go check them out. Like, we have a coupon for them if you want to buy something, but just checking them out and kind of seeing how it works is cool, because I am one of those people that once I write something down, it just makes me feel that much better about it. I'm like, I don't really remember that thing because it's in my back pocket, and that's how I feel about the quick draw cards from Maddie. It's like that pilot checklist to me.
And honestly, ask yourself if you take a checklist to the grocery store for milk, eggs, bread, celery, carrots, all of the
It's
stuff that you're
it's the
making for
exact
dinner
same
that
thing.
week.
It's the exact same thing as the grocery list. It's not
Yeah.
weird,
Why are you not making one for a high stress situation?
right?
It,
Yeah, dinner is that important, Chris.
yeah, apparently, but getting a flat tire at 90 miles an hour going down I-40 isn't. Oh,
Right.
so that's that's really what it comes down to. The reality is that stress makes memory loss more frequent and it makes your memory less reliable, not more reliable. So FEMA, who we like to rag on constantly,
Yeah, we're not nice to FEMA, but I've always said they're a very good aggregator of data.
yes, they are very good at pulling lots of numbers from a whole bunch of
Right.
places. So if anyone from the Federal Emergency Management Agency would like to come on as a guest and talk to us so that we stop bashing them, we would love to have you on. Um, but FEMA repeatedly emphasizes planning and practice because familiarity improves performance during emergencies. And that's not because FEMA thinks everybody needs a 3-ring binder the size of a phone book. It's because your brain performs better when it has rehearsed something before.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I'm not going to plug the Mad Gear stuff too much, but it literally is like that 3-ring binder, right? And my topo, perfect example of that is if my cell phone dies and I don't have my maps and I'm lost somewhere, I just have that backup paper map and I know how to use it, which is honestly one of the reasons that we kind of created the tool like the TACNAV card, because navigation is impossible without tools like, a compass or a map and things like that. And having a simple reference point like that can just reduce uncertainty when you're under stress. And, Chris, you and I both have just a little TACNAV card in our wallet, and there's a bunch of cool tools on there. And I know the NOAA frequencies, and I, can navigate a map with one, and I can know how far away I am from a person with one of those pretty easily.
Yeah, and preparedness tools work best when they simplify decisions. I mean, the more thinking that you've done ahead of time, the less thinking you have to do when things become complicated. So that makes the decision making when things are complicated a lot easier. And that actually brings us to one of the biggest reasons people panic in the first place. It's not that fear, it's the uncertainty. People are terrified of the unknown. Human beings dislike uncertainty far more than we usually admit. And when uncertainty increases, people start searching for answers. The problem is that not all answers are good answers.
Right.
I mean, I can I could have the power in the house go out right now and think, "Hey, the power's out. I need light." The best option is to start a fire
Start a fire in the
right
front room.
right here, right now on the
Yeah,
carpet.
of
That's
course.
a great way to
Immediate light.
provide light.
Right.
Second and third order consequences are not going to be my friend, but I
Right.
have light until
Yep.
I can't get out of my recording studio and the rest of the house is, engulfed in flames.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
exactly.
good idea, bad idea. What is my uncertainty factor?
Yeah, and we've talked about this on a billion different episodes.
Yeah, we've talked about this on how to remain calm, make wise decisions. We've talked about this on prepper burnout, pace modeling, all kinds of things. So, if you are interested in learning more about this, feel free to look through our back catalog. And you will almost undoubtedly find something that we have said that will become a favorite quote that you can turn into your favorite teacher.
Yeah, and it's funny because you say that, like, all this information we have out there, one of the biggest drivers in panic in modern society isn't the lack of information, it's actually having too much information, and I know that seems, like, wrong sometimes, but it that's actually what it is, like, sometimes you just have too much information and you don't really know where to get it.
And let's talk about information, right? So, more accurately, let's talk about what happens when we get buried under it. Because one of the strangest things about modern emergencies is we don't often suffer from a lack of information anymore. I mean, we're putting out information and we're doing our best to make it as accurate and digestible as possible. But sometimes we do suffer from too much information.
Which sounds just ridiculous until you have lived through it once.
And that's very true. Think about any major event in the last decade: hurricane, wildfire, severe weather outbreak, pandemic, major power outage. Within minutes, there are hundreds, sometimes thousands of voices competing for your attention. News organizations, government agencies, neighbors, social media, family members, random people on the internet who somehow became experts 5 minutes ago, or two jokers who decided 2 years ago to start a podcast.
Right, or at least one guy, like, filming from his truck telling everybody that civilization's gonna end by Tuesday.
I mean, there is always the scene from Independence Day where the guy is standing on the corner going, "El Toro, you'll never make it to El Toro."
Yeah, there's actually some really good there's a lot of, like, good movie shots where, like, the end is near guy and then, like, he gets taken out by a bus or something.
Yeah, his end
Yeah.
is near, very
Yeah,
near. It's critical to the subplot, right?
right.
But the challenge is that your brain has limited bandwidth, and researchers studying decision making have consistently found that as information volume increases, decision quality often decreases. And that's not because people are stupid, because eventually the brain becomes overwhelmed. And when that happens, people tend to do one of three things. They freeze, which we've talked about before, that fight, flight, or freeze. They follow the crowd, or they latch on to the first explanation that makes them feel better.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, paralysis by analysis, and whether the information is true or not, they will latch on to that first thing.
And that's where things can become kind of dangerous, because that latching on to the first viable explanation that makes them feel better is the birthplace of a lot of pretty dangerous or radical conspiracy theories, because it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. And that's where panic often starts spreading socially. So, one of the biggest misconceptions about panic is that people think it always originates inside the individual, right? And sometimes it does. But often panic is contagious. If enough people around you appear frightened or uncertain or convinced that disaster is imminent, that emotional state starts spreading, whether or not you can identify what they are panicked about.
Right, and that honestly explains about half of social media today.
At least half. And
Right.
this is not a new phenomenon. I mean, human beings have always looked to other people for cues about danger. Thousands of years ago, that made sense. If everybody in the tribe suddenly started running, you probably shouldn't stand there conducting an investigation as to why the blueberries in the bush smelled like cat pee instead of looking for the saber-toothed cat that was coming barreling down the mountain towards you.
Right. Yeah. You can ask the questions later, preferably while you are running away from the saber-toothed tiger.
Hopefully, you're that
Yeah.
fast. The problem is that modern communication allows fear to travel much, much faster than ever before. So, and this is kind of a controversial term. So I will frame that this way. The World Health Organization actually coined the term infodemic during the COVID era to describe situations where massive amounts of information, both accurate and inaccurate, made it harder for people to find trustworthy guidance. And really sit and kind of think on that one for a second, because too much information actually became its own emergency.
Yeah, and I think most listeners have probably experienced that firsthand. You've got 10 different sources saying 10 different things, and suddenly you have no idea what to believe. And to make things worse, we had things like the Virality Project, I think, going on that was during COVID, that was like an active campaign by the US government to censor and suppress free speech on digital channels like Twitter and YouTube, basically calling anything that went against the official narrative misinformation. And this isn't political. I mean, we really try to steer clear of that. But I just want to use that as an example that whether the information was true or not, there was so much stuff going on out there. The government finally said we need to find a way to get our message out loudest because there's so much other information out there. And what ended up happening was they ended up censoring a lot of factual information, which is crazy that whether that was the goal or not, we could argue that offline. But the fact that that's what happened because there was so much information, it was truly information overload for everybody. And it's crazy to look back on that, man. Like the post op on the COVID information stuff is just nuts to me. Like when you look back and kind of look at that after action report, it's crazy what we actually saw go down.
And with the controversy that is still surrounding it, it's
Yeah, it gets
it's just
crazier
a
every
hot
day.
mess.
It's nuts, man.
So that's why one of the best anti-panic skills you can develop is information discipline, right? Not information avoidance, information discipline. Know where you are getting your information, know why you trust it, not just that you trust it, but know why you trust it, and know how to verify it. Don't just have one person on Facebook Reels who you follow and I trust this guy 120% with my life and my kid's life and my grandkids' life because everything he has said so far has been true. But you're not verifying any of that third party information. So the first time a significant fact comes out of their mouth that is not true, you're holding it as gospel. That's not the way to look at it, right?
Yeah,
So
that's actually a really important point because I think the first report that people hear is often wrong, and a lot of times the second report is wrong too. And I know you've seen that go down in real time before. I definitely have, where something happens, whatever the event is, and you know the first news reports are just completely wrong, like they get every single fact wrong about it, and it's not because they're like trying to lie to you, it's because that is whatever the loudest voice out there, so they just say, oh yeah, well the reports say this and this, and oftentimes it's just completely untrue.
look at the OJ Simpson case. When we were first watching that white Bronco being chased by police, and how many of the reports were coming out that there was a shooting and this was a hostage situation and everything like that. And none of that ended up being true.
Oh, that's crazy, I didn't know that. Really? That's like where the white Bronco chase started?
And within the first, I would say, 10 minutes or so, that was what it was being reported. And then they identified who it was and things like that. But it was
Oh.
all very, very wildly wrong for the first 10 or 15 minutes. And then it started to fall into the story that we now know today.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I will say that one thing I've noticed over the years is that people desperately want certainty during uncertain situations, and that's completely understandable. But sometimes the most honest answer is we don't know yet. And being comfortable with that answer is actually a resilience skill. Uh, Unfortunately, I won't say this for every global government, but the US government is really bad at saying we don't know yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely easier said than done to just be like, "Yep, I'm okay with that answer." It's real tough to do that because everybody wants closure.
Exactly. But it is trainable. And that brings us to one of the most fascinating concepts in psychology, which is normalcy bias. If you've never heard that term before, don't worry, you have definitely seen it. Normalcy bias is the tendency for people to assume things will continue functioning the way they always have, even when evidence suggests otherwise.
This is the meme with the dog that says everything is fine while the house is on fire behind him.
Yep,
Yeah, this is
exactly.
that. And this is I did look it up. We talked about this on a couple different episodes that there was the London tube fire where there was a fire and it wasn't anything nefarious. I think it was an accidental fire. But because no one really told people not to like keep doing their thing, people just walked right into the smoke and right into the fire because like they had to go to work. They're like, "Oh, well, no one's no one's saying this is bad even though like smoke normally doesn't billow out of the, subway. I'll just keep going." And like people died because no one told them that that wasn't good. So they just had this normalcy bias that, well, I will just continue going to work and like the government will tell me not to if I shouldn't.
Yeah, it was an extreme case of keep calm
Yeah.
and carry on into smoke inhalation and death.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's everything is probably fine until it isn't. And that's what normalcy bias is. But research studying evacuations, disasters, emergency behavior have repeatedly found that many people delay action because their brains are trying to fit new information into an old framework. And I am guilty of this as well. And my wife actually coached me out of it when it came to one of our emergency plans. Um, but the warning has to be exaggerated. The storm will turn, the outage won't last long, the smoke is probably nothing, the symptoms will go away, the market will recover tomorrow, everything will return to normal. Eh, you're you're thinking very optimistically
Yeah,
sometimes.
and to be fair, sometimes it does. Sometimes everything is just fine.
Sometimes it does. Yeah. And that's what makes this so tricky. Normalcy bias isn't irrational, it is efficient. Most days, assuming things are normal is a perfectly reasonable strategy. The problem is that emergencies are, by definition, not normal. And if you wait too long to acknowledge reality, your options begin disappearing very, very quickly.
Right, which is one of those lessons that applies way beyond preparedness, way beyond anything we talk about.
Oh, 100%. Financial planning, health, relationships, career decisions. Most major problems don't appear all at once. They kind of accumulate. And people often ignore them because that change is gradual. It's what's that old parable, the frog in the boiling pot?
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he won't jump out of the pot if you slowly bring it to a boil. The frog has a normalcy bias and says, you know what? It'll probably cool down."
Yeah. And by the time it realizes it's time to jump out of the pot, it's already way too late and it's cooked. So preparedness just gives us another lens for recognizing that pattern. Now, here's the encouraging part of this. Research shows that training changes outcomes significantly. One of the reasons emergency responders, pilots, military personnel, medical professionals train repeatedly, it's not because they're trying to eliminate stress. They are trying to become familiar with it.
Yeah, that's just such a huge distinction because nobody is promising that you will be calm.
Exactly. This the goal isn't calm. It's never been calm.
Right.
The goal is function. You can be scared out of your freaking mind and still function. You can be stressed and still function. You can be uncertain and still function. Preparedness isn't about becoming fearless and Superman and just, I can do anything because I'm a super prepper. It's about remaining useful despite your fear. And a lot of people refer to this as fear inoculation.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the most important points in this entire episode is yes, understanding the difference between panic and fear and how those things work together and stress and how all three of those things sometimes are useful.
Exactly. Building a medical kit, practicing communications, learning navigation, testing a backup power system, running through a family emergency plan. Those activities do more than build capability. They actually build confidence, and confidence reduces panic. Not because your confidence guarantees success. There's no guarantee of success in this, but because confidence gives your brain a starting point. I've done this before. I can do this again.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. And yeah, it is that familiarity it reduces the uncertainty, right? I mean, that really is what this is all about.
Preparedness isn't about knowing everything either. It's about shortening the distance between problem and action. So, before we start to wrap up, let's make this practical. All right, AC.
Okay.
If somebody listening today wants to become less vulnerable to panic, what can they actually do?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing really is reducing uncertainty where it's possible. You know where your important documents are, know your emergency contacts, know your meeting locations, know where your supplies are, know what you have, and then writing that stuff down because I guarantee you, if you know it right this second, you are not going to remember it as well in an actual emergency.
I would agree with that. And then I would say, second, practice the small inconveniences. Not because discomfort is fun, but because adaptability improves with use. So take a different route home, cook during a power outage, navigate without GPS occasionally. Just challenge yourself in those low risk environments.
That's actually our practice your preps episode right there. You just said it. It was those things like practice your preps. Go back and listen to that episode. I actually liked that one. That was
That was a
one of
fun
my
one.
it was a fun one. It was one of my more favorite ones to kind of put together because we basically took things that could be an emergency and said, let's do them when they're not an emergency. And so it didn't seem like crazy prepper talk. It was just like, hey, put your phone in the glove box while you drive to a destination and see if you can get there. So I think that was the fun one. Go back and listen to that episode. That was a fun one. But third, I would say build trusted information resources before you need them. Don't wait until that crisis to figure out who you trust, right? Like get your NOAA radio and know what frequency your local NOAA radio is and know that that is an all hazards radio. And so when things go bad, not just weather, there's going to be stuff on there. And around the news sources, this is interesting. I was actually just talking to a buddy this week about that, and I don't know how you feel about this. And this, again, I don't want to get political about anything. This is just an observation on a very apolitical observation is that I find that my friends that send me like news stories to read, right? Like, hey, read this story. I find that people who pay for news rely on that news more. Like they believe that that news is true. And like I said, it's totally apolitical, but like if somebody gives CNN $5 a month, then I feel like there's sort of that sunk cost fallacy there that they're like, well, I have to believe this story because I'm paying money for it.
I can see that.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I'm not, I didn't read this anywhere. I'm not like reading a study. I'm just kind of making that up. But the way I've seen this in my social circles that, and it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's The Blaze or Epoch Times or Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, it doesn't matter. But like the people that I know that have paid for that service, when they send me that story about this news thing that happened, they put a lot more weight on the sources that they have paid money to get it from.
I I
Can you
agree
see
with
that?
that. I
It's
see
kind
a
of
lot of
it's
that, yeah.
it's kind of weird, isn't it? It's like, no, this is true because like I give them $5 a month. And I just think that's kind of funny. And and you look back at like at our podcast, right? Like Nobody pays us anything for this. We don't even have ads. We're not even looking for ad revenue because we really just want to like produce this information. And when we have a dog in a fight, we'll tell you. But I find that the people are like, oh yeah, no, this is like true. Well, how do you know it's true? Because I give them $5 a month, so it has to be true, or I'm an idiot.
Yeah, and that's just not the case. You can pay somebody $1,500 a month and they can still sling you a line of bullshit that just
Right.
makes you pay them $1,500 a month for a line of bullshit.
Right. Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and even the stuff that I send you, all the news articles that I send you, a lot of them are prepping related. Some of them are gun related. Some of them are just absolutely crazy stories out of
Yeah,
Florida. But
sure.
I mean, it's just random stuff that sometimes a lot of them are topics that we could bring up on the podcast or, hey, we should add this to this episode. We should, consider this angle, things like that. So it's not verified at all until you and I decide to go in and verify it from another source.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point that oftentimes we will kick news information back and forth, which is like, hey, that's pretty funny. But then we're like, hey, do you want to do an episode on that? And then it's like, okay, let's go find that from a bunch of different sources. If we can find firsthand information on that thing, let's do that. And it actually does require quite a bit of research nowadays. Because when people say research, they mean going on the internet. But like with us, if we do like product research, we're like buying it and then putting something through its paces.
Yeah. Or even if we see it on a Facebook reel, to find the original source
Yeah.
is challenging.
It can be tough sometimes. That's exactly right. Now, before we wrap this up, I will say finally, the one thing to take home here is that remember that panic is not a character flaw. It's actually a normal human response. It's very normal. And the objective is not perfection. The objective here is improvement.
Would say that's really the takeaway from today's episode. Panic isn't weakness. Panic isn't failure. It's not proof that you're unprepared. It's information, right? And the key is learning what to do with it because the people who perform best during crises aren't necessarily the strongest. Like I said, they're not Superman, they're not John Wick, they're not, all of these super extraordinary people that we have put on a pedestal in Hollywood. They are they aren't even necessarily the smartest, and they definitely aren't the most experienced. Very often, they're simply the people who learned how to keep moving while everyone else was still trying to process what happened. Look at uh, Captain Spears in Band of Brothers.
In Band of Brothers, right? Yeah.
He
Yeah.
just kept moving.
Yeah.
And
Just go.
everyone else on the battlefield, nobody knew what to do with it. And he broke everybody's OODA loop because he just kept moving. So that's the great way to look at it.
Or Brad Pitt in World War Z, where he said, movement is life. And he said it in Spanish. I'm not going to say in Spanish, but it was like, if you keep moving, right? Movement is life. And then as soon as he like leaves those people because they didn't want to come with them, then the zombies eat them. So, I mean, if you can't believe Brad Pitt in a zombie flick, who can you believe, really?
I mean, if you can't believe Brad Pitt, then who are you giving
Right?
your $1,500 a month to?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, anyway, I think the take home point here is that it's a skills, and skills can be learned.
Absolutely. And next week, we're going to build on that idea because while understanding panic is important, people rarely face hardship alone. So, whether it's a neighborhood, a family, a workplace, a church group, a volunteer organization, a community of friends, the people around us often have a tremendous impact on how we navigate difficult situations. So, next week, we're going to talk about the collapse of community and why some groups seem to weather storms better than others.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a fun one. And like we said, this is kind of a 5-part series on that mental resiliency side of preparedness. And this is important. This is really important. I know a lot of people are probably saying, you know what, I just don't want to listen to these guys anymore because, they're not talking about beans and bullets enough. But really, I think this is important. I think it's going to be a fun series to kind of put together. I think we're going to wrap this up with a professional, like a guy who's got like DR in front of his name, which is kind of rad. And then we will get back to, the guns and gear and ammo and things like that. But this is a very important piece of preparedness that a lot of people don't touch on, and that mental and emotional resiliency side of preparedness. And we're going to go into it, like you said, into the, community resilience and all that kind of stuff. And then I promise by episode 101, we'll get back to, all the, guns and silliness and fire.
Somebody gave me fire.
Somebody give me fire.
Yes. So come back next week as we continue this series with more of a group dynamic response. But until then, remember, you are your own stakeholder. We'll see you then.